Hi there and welcome to Isolation TV. I'm Tony Moclair and joining me now for More Than the Score is the great man, sports aficionado and statistician of note. You've heard him on SEN. He is Troy Zantuck. And he joins me for something of a footy flashback that we're doing here on More Than the Score. We're looking at the golden years of the VFL/AFL. G'day, Troy.
G'day, Tone. Great to be with you once again, mate. Episode 3. Time has flown in the coronavirus era, but I'm really loving it, mate. Getting a lot of great feedback from friends of mine who listened into the show the past 2 episodes, and they love the nostalgia. They love the flashbacks. They love jumping in Doctor Who's TARDIS and heading back to the 70s, 80s, 90s, and a little bit of the modern stuff.
We're like the Gold FM of football, aren't we?
More like the Eon FM, Tone.
Fantastic. Okay, let's go all the way back to the United. Well, now it's I think we touched on it last week, but we want to fully explore it this week, Troy. And I was especially reminded of it last night when I was watching the replay of the 1979 grand final between, and it was a filthy game, Collingwood versus Carlton. Of course, the famous statistic, harms to Shelton goal, victory sealed for the Blues. But there was so much about that game that's different from now. And we're not talking about the style of play or the tightness of the shorts or anything like that. How the ground looked, how the sponsorship was displayed at the ground, and little things like that, and the sponsors of the team.
Yeah, you're not wrong, Tone. That 1979 grand final, obviously iconic in Collingwood Carlton history, more so the Blue Baggers. But Alex Jesaulenko, captain coach that day. Do they have captain coaches these days? No, they don't. There's a throwback to the past. And the conditions, quagmire stuff, absolutely incredible. But I really enjoyed that particular grand final because it was just a knock 'em down type scenario. And every one of those blokes that walked off that day wouldn't have had an ounce of energy. They absolutely gave it their all. But a great result. And I can see that Cheshire Cat smile on your face, Tony Moclair. Absolutely lapping it up.
Well, look, there hasn't been a lot of premiership glory for the Baggers lately. So when you look at players like Harms, Mark McClure could play a bit. There was Mike Fitzpatrick running around. There was that whole mosquito fleet, it was just magnificent to watch. But what I did notice about it was how the ground is different now. There was only one thing painted on the ground, that being the VFL symbol. There were a range of sponsors that we're going to talk about now, but what would be unthinkable in 2020 or 2021 is somebody putting over a big knitted sign or hand-painted sign saying Tony Shaw over a sponsor's logo, and that was allowed to happen.
Oh, the blue coats back then. You remember the blue coats as you'd walk through and they'd usher you to your seat and usher you out of your seat if you're in the wrong position? Absolutely. I remember in the probably mid-70s Tone when North Melbourne and Hawthorn were at their absolute peak. North Melbourne have courage, Kennedy's Hawks, all draping over the sponsorship. And as you said, mate, these days wouldn't pass the sniff test, let me tell you.
No, you're right, there'd be some behavioural awareness officer that would be down there and grabbing it. And that was the other thing. There was no sponsorship on the ball. And as far as I could tell from this 1979 grand final, they only used the one ball because it was dark. It was virtually black by the end of the game. That's such a great observation about the players leaving nothing on the paddock. They were trudging through mud. Can you imagine doing that in a tightly fought contest for 4 quarters with all that adrenaline and so much at stake? But I did notice some of the sponsors around, on the hoarding or whatever it's called, around the edge of the ground. And I wonder I mean, we were always told, Troy, that advertising pays, but these companies aren't around to see the benefit of that advertising. You ready for these companies?
Well, I'm waiting with bated breath, Tone.
All right. AGC Finance.
AGC Finance, I like it. Yes.
All right.
Yeah.
They were there. You might, now I know 4 and 20 pies are still around, but not with the old logo of the pies actually escaping from the pie. They were blackbirds. Now that might float in Wuhan, but not the way we roll in Melbourne.
It's pretty topical at the moment, isn't it? Birds floating out of pies.
Right. So
Yeah.
you might want to avoid sourcing your ingredients for the pie from a wet market. That's just a little bit of advice from us here.
Yes, because you could get the Wuhan whooping cough.
Exactly. Thank you.
Yeah.
There was also ads for Marlborough.
Yes. Also, Marlborough and Winfield were in. They were just emblazoned all around. It's incredible that the smoking and the alcohol companies, how much they put in to the VFL/AFL over the journey.
Well, what a lot of people, I mean, I'm sure you can find them if you Google them, but I'm sure there's a coffee table book to be made, Troy, in sportsmen's post-game cigarettes. Because
yes.
there was, like the Herald and the Sun used to routinely run pictures of Premiership players relaxing after the game with a durry.
Absolutely spot on, Tone. And Jezza was a tremendous practitioner of the after-match durry, along with Percival Jones.
Great man.
I saw Jeff Southby in a photo with a cigarette, and I thought, wow, that's not the Jeff Southby image.
No, I totally agree with that. He was playing in 1979 too, of course. Geez, what about that? But
Malcolm Blight was another great exponent of the after-match, after a big win durry.
Geez, imagine if he hadn't smoked, he could kick it comfortably 420 metres. I wonder how many metres the odd durry cost him. Do you know of any others? It'd be, like I said, it'd be a great coffee table book, and I would happily buy one.
Yeah, no, look, it was, and obviously the beer was on tap. It was just like a cascading waterfall of the sponsor's product after a game. Obviously, North being sponsored by Courage and Ace Lager and Tooth LA back in the 70s and 80s. They were great days.
Wins supporting, see, this is like, I'm a child of the 70s, obviously. To me, they're not sponsors, they were supporters. But Wins, who sponsored Hawthorn, they had the that kind of stylized W. There we go.
Yeah, Windvale Wines were a massive sponsor for the Hawks back when sponsors actually started. And obviously with Carlton, it was Avco, and the Magpies, famously Yakka.
Well, that was, again, another thing. And you look at how far drainage has come. It's not a glamorous side of the sport, but geez, it makes a difference. Looking at this final from 40 years ago, if you were the chairman of Hard Yakka and you were spending a lot of money sponsoring the Collingwood Football Club, you could not see the logo because every player was caked in mud.
Yes,
now,
and
that doesn't happen these days.
Well, it doesn't happen these days, Tone. It's interesting that you bring up caked in mud, because Moorabbin, Linton Street Oval, was an absolute receptacle for water and and mud. And the showers at the end of the games from opposition players, let's say they weren't on the warm side, and the players would drive home to their abodes, and that smell, that rancid smell of the Linton Street mud would go all the way back to their homes. And let's say the wives or the girlfriends not too happy on the night of their beloved returning.
No, a bit of couch time after a game down there, I'd say. That's no way to treat visitors, somebody being hosted at your ground and you're giving them, well, not only the cold shoulder, but the cold showers.
That was the Moorabbin way.
Well, yeah, 'twas ever thus. Now, Troy, a couple of other sponsors that may have gone the way of the dodo that I noticed in the 1979 grand final that was on Fox Footy last night. I give you Riggs Pants.
Riggs pants. Now that is a blast from the past. Now it brings a smile to the dial, but I'll see your Riggs pants for Alexander's menswear stores.
Outstanding.
So,
Well, this is, I remember late 70s, they all would have been flares, I imagined. And Alexander's slogan was probably, "We've got your pimp look covered."
it was very Huggy Bear, Starsky and Hutch pimp style flares, weren't they? Back in the 70s.
Well, at the, I think last quarter, halfway through last quarter, you mentioned Jeslenko. He went down, I think, with some sort of ankle or foot injury. Had to be helped away by the trainers. There was no little trolley, no motorized trolley, nothing like that. They got him off the field. There was a long bomb from just near the centre square that landed just near him as he was being, gently shepherded towards the bench. The other leading cause of injury that day, from what I could see, Troy, was lack of circulation to the groin area. Some of those shorts. Every club would have employed a boot stutter, sure, a doctor, sure, and then somebody else whose job it was to shoehorn some of these blokes into their shorts.
Well, they actually renamed it, Tone, as the ball horn. They were, I'll tell you what, baby making wasn't on the agenda after a close game.
No.
And obviously the great Warwick Kappa made tight shorts famous back in the 80s with the Swans.
Well, maybe one of the more unofficial statistics doing the rounds back in those days was number of sperm killed by shorts.
Let's say that'd be in the high billions over the journey.
I reckon.
I've got a couple of my own for you, Tone.
Yes, please, Troy.
Sponsor hoardings.
Yep.
I don't know whether you remember Canon copiers.
Yes, I do. Yes.
Yes.
They now make cameras. I don't think they make any copiers anymore.
No. And there was also, and they're always big in today's game as well, tyre sponsors. And a lot of sponsorship back in the 70s and 80s was BF Goodrich. You remember BF Goodrich?
I certainly do. Yeah. Yep. Any kind of cheeky slogans there? If you're going to burn rubber, burn it with us, or anything like that. Well, actually, Troy, you've reminded me, because another great use of the advertising hoarding that you don't see at the games anymore was leaning over the fence. And you remember by banging it, you'd get a great sound, and you'd be able to get, Carlton, that sort of thing. I don't think that happens anymore, does it?
No, the acoustics were tremendous back in the banging of hoardings days and Carlton. But I still hear, when I watch the coverage, St Kilda fans have kept the tradition up.
How have they done that? Are they still, look, it doesn't take much encouragement for them to just hit an inanimate object. I get that.
Can I give you a rendition?
Yes, please.
And look, I've got a lot of St Kilda supporters, and they're going to hate me for this, but it's go Sainters, go Sainters, go Sainters. Yes, I know it's cringeworthy, but as you said, any port in a storm.
Yeah, no, agreed. I'm happy to briefly segue, Troy, into stereotypes of club supporters. I've told this story a few times, but I absolutely love it. I was at a game about 20 years ago, and it was Carlton versus Melbourne.
Oh, and, okay. Yep.
The crowd went up when I always say Sean Charles, who played for both clubs. So I don't know if he was. Yeah. He was involved in a scuffle, and a Carlton player pushed him over. I think it was Sean Charles, but anyway, the names are unimportant. But no, it was the Melbourne player. It was the Melbourne player who pushed over the Carlton player. And the Carlton fans went up. They were furious. And this old guy in front of me, he would have been like nudging 90, turned around to the Carlton supporters and went, "Oh yeah, well now we're even for what you've done to Percy Grimmett in '48."
Oh boy, the D's, they never forget.
They never forget. He'd been nursing that one for a while.
That's one of the best nurses I've ever heard, Tone. A 50-year grudge. And he thought, here's the moment to bring it up.
Yeah. He waited half a century for the square up, but he was happy.
Tears would have been rolling down your cheeks.
Oh, that was magnificent. So he wasn't quite your classic Melbourne supporter, as in go D's numbers 1 through 30. Do you want to give us and these are crude stereotypes. We acknowledge that, but
obviously Melbourne, obviously ski season with the Range Rovers and the snow chains.
Oh yes,
it's an old favourite. Look, Carlton supporters, wow, guys, when you were winning premierships, and the key word there is when you were winning premierships.
Thank you.
The cockiness that come from the Robert Heatley stand was absolutely nauseating.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. I really can.
Yeah, obviously North Melbourne. Look, I've always had a soft spot for North Melbourne supporters because they spent a lot of years in the wilderness until 1975 when they become the glamour team of the competition. But the Shinboners, they've always had that great work ethic, and I've always got along pretty well with their supporters. Hawthorn supporters of late.
Oh,
the three-peat, Tone.
Yeah, I'm with you. They are the Carlton supporters of the later years, you'd have to say.
Great call. Great call.
The first football game I ever went to as a kid was at Arden Street. And I must have had a very sheltered life, Troy, because it's the first time I ever saw a woman drink a beer and smoke and swear. I was not impressed.
You must have lived the bubble boy type existence, Tone.
Well, exactly. And I said, "Mum, put your beer down. We're out." No.
Did your parents follow the football? Did they have a team?
We arrived from Ireland in the early '70s, so they adopted. Mum's a mad gardener, so she liked hawthorn. Hawthorn is a plant, so she went for Hawthorn. Dad was a Newcastle fan, so he went for Collingwood. So there was a bit of tension in the house. We were all like the 7 tribes of Israel. There was St Kilda support in that corner of the house, and all the boys pretty much rusted on Carlton. So, but I lived for a while above a shop. And that's a story for another time because there is a million stories from this particular shed.
I'm sure. How old are you, Tone, at this stage?
This story, 25, 26.
Many stories to be told, yeah.
Yes. A sporting goods store that sold AFL merchandise in summer from trestle tables.
Yes.
Everything was cash. And the cash was quickly recycled by the proprietor of this fine store at the TAB across the road. Anyway, I'm not joking. The receipt for the first month's rent was written on the back of a betting slip. That's not a joke. It's not a joke. Anyway, so it was just around the corner from Victoria Park.
Okay. Was it Merritt Hassett, the store?
No, not quite. No.
In Johnston Street? No.
No, it was. I don't think it had a name.
Oh, okay.
It may have been one of those.
For the purposes of this podcast, the store didn't have a name. I like it.
Okay, can we just call him a struggling retailer? There we go.
A struggling retailer. Okay.
Struggling retailer before it was trendy.
That's our default switch.
That's right. But being upstairs on a Saturday afternoon, I used to see the Collingwood faithful stroll past. And I can tell you, every stereotype of a Collingwood supporter is 100% correct.
Oh, Tone. You haven't dispelled the myth.
No. They were, look, more than a few of them had a copy of the collected sayings of Foucault and A Companion Guide to Modern Philosophy. A lot of them had that tucked under their arms. Don't get me wrong.
Well, I'd be very surprised, Tony, if they hadn't. Very erudite supporters. Don't worry about that.
No, exactly. But then there were quite a few who clearly hated their dentist, given dentistry.
Dental hygiene wasn't high on the list.
No, well, many of these Collingwood supporters had come to the fork in the road, forced by limited financial straits or financial circumstances. Do I get my front teeth replaced, or do I get a swallow tattooed on my neck? I'll go the latter.
Yes.
There was a bit of that.
There was a bit of that. So they're your fond memories of your Collingwood brethren.
Exactly. So I'm just saying, in broadly speaking, stereotypes, as somebody once said, stereotypes are a real time saver.
Yeah, that's not bad. That's very Confucian of you there, Tony.
Well,
now, Adelaide supporters.
Philosophy near Victoria Park. Adelaide supporters, let's talk.
Well, have you encountered? Have you been to Football Park before?
Quite a few times, yes.
Oh.
Yes, I was at a draw there between Carlton and Port Adelaide, and that, I don't know if you've ever been to a drawn game, Troy, but that is.
Yeah, I have. Yeah. It's you just don't. It's sort of a feeling of limbo, isn't it? You just don't know whether to clap or cry.
Yeah, it's a great way of putting it.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that you didn't drive from Victoria over there. You obviously had a plane ticket back.
No, I was living there. I was living there at the time doing radio. And
yes, I do remember with Julian Schiller.
That's right.
Yes.
Hawk supporter Julian Schiller. In a 20-minute city, which Adelaide was, Football Park was about 40 minutes out of the ground. It was a long drive.
It's in West Lakes, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Near Leighton Hewitt's pad, or his old pad. And now this is the days of Port doing so poorly, Troy. Remember they used to put we were talking about hoarding earlier. I don't know what the name is for those big plastic sheets they used to put over empty seats. Do you remember that?
I do, with the Port Power colours emblazoned on them. Yeah.
That's right.
And now, they filled up a few seats, let me tell you, Tone.
Well, unfortunately, they had to. And, I've always had a bit of a soft spot for Port because Adelaide is a two-team town. But Port get barely a look in the media. They are the real underdog there. And they couldn't pull skin off custard, as they say at the time.
Yeah.
That's not a problem they have anymore, though, thankfully.
No, they get some great crowds to Port Adelaide games at the Adelaide Oval. And what a wonderful setting that is. They've done an absolute a bang-up job of, reconfiguring the grandstands. And it's a beautiful ground to watch both cricket and football at. You've got to take your hat off to the Adelaideans in regards to what they've done there.
I must admit I haven't had the pleasure. I certainly watched a game of cricket at the old ground, and I challenge anyone to come up with a better cricketing experience than watching cricket at the Adelaide Oval on a beautiful summer day with Shane Warne bowling. I haven't had the pleasure of witness any footy game at the newly reconditioned stadium, but I've got to say that was a very bold move by the City of Adelaide, because that ground I thought was like the crown jewel of the place. And I being a conservative-minded city, I didn't think that they would roll the dice on something that ambitious, but I'm really glad they did, and I think it's been a magnificent effort, I've got to say.
Yeah, absolutely right. And it brings me back to grounds. I remember travelling up to Queensland when the Brisbane Bears come onto the scene.
You go to Carrara,
and have a listen to this. The players used to get dressed in school portables. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the glamour.
Believe it or not.
Professional athlete. Wow. Okay, and then what? A trudge from the school portable to the ground?
Yeah, it was an amazing setup, Carrara. In its initial stages, they've done a great job now with Metricon Stadium. It's come up Mickey Mouse, but back in the day, I went up there to watch a Melbourne game a couple of times. I think it was 88 and 89.
Yep.
And the facilities were absolutely, you had to see them to believe them. For a VFL team, what they did to the Brisbane Bears when they initially went up there, they had nowhere to train. I remember Peter Knight's taking on the coaching job.
Yeah.
And he basically, a wonderful guy, one of the greatest players of all time. He just basically said, what is going on here? You've given me absolutely nothing. And it was pretty much a foreign legion type setup where the initial Brisbane Bears list was sort of hand-me-downs from other AFL, VFL clubs.
Yeah, you're right. There was no kind of priority draft picks or anything like that sent their way.
No, and obviously they emanated. They become the Brisbane Lions with the merger with Fitzroy, and they become a powerhouse for many years. And they've come such a long way. But the Brisbane Bears, the bad news Bears, they were dark days back at Carrara.
Was Roger Merritt playing with them then?
Yeah, Roger Merritt.
Wrong? He was.
No, so Roger Merritt went up there on a massive deal. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And now he left Essendon to go there, didn't he? I thought that was at the tail end of his career, though, Troy.
It was, but he did give the Brisbane Bears some very, very good service.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah. And I think they were very happy to have him because he was a great player. He was a great leader. And from memory, and you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, he was the first big name that they actually landed. Is that a fair way of putting it?
Oh, well, he was massive, but the name that didn't come off, the big name that they recruited was Warwick Capper.
Yep.
And
of course,
he went from being an absolute superstar with the Swans to Carrara, and the ball wasn't being delivered as well. When you've got Greg Williams and Jared Healy pinging it out of the middle at the Sydney Cricket Ground, life becomes a bit easier. On the expanses of Carrara, where the ball wasn't coming down lace out, he ran into a lot of trouble. So he was another massive signing for the Bears, but he's the one that didn't come off. And obviously he went back to Sydney, but by then the horse had bolted. But he, those 3 or 4 years, he's kicking 100 goals and 90 goals. He was an amazing player. And I don't think he gets enough credit.
I agree with that. See, this is the thing. He, off field, we know what he's like. But again, it's a bit like Brendan Favola. There's the off-field persona and then the on-field persona. And both of those guys I just mentioned can point to the stats, and that they're argument-ending stats.
Absolutely spot on, Tone. And as you said, personas are very important, and sometimes people can't separate that playing persona to the off-field persona. It doesn't. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk to you about this. Who was coaching Kappa at Sydney when he left? Was it Barassi?
Tom Hafey went to Sydney to coach Sydney after Geelong.
Yep.
And Tom Hafey was, he's a big rap for Warwick Capper. So they had a star-studded team. They had guys like Bernard Toohey.
Yep.
Bolton, both of those guys from Geelong. They had Rocket Rod Carter at fullback, Ian Roberts running off the half-back line, Greg Williams, Jared Healy, Murphy. They just had Merv Neagle was up there for a while.
Oh, yeah.
They were very entertaining to watch on a Sunday afternoon, I must say, the Swans.
And of course, Tom Hafey in his Adidas T-shirts and the bulging biceps and the complete avoidance of alcohol, of course, that we remember. Probably doing 942 push-ups in the coach's box just because he could.
Because he could.
I wonder how Peter Knights went handling a personality like Warwick Capper, but of course you pointed out, those key differences that Capper would have encountered when he headed north, as you said, the bigger grounds and the lack of delivery. How would Peter Knights have gone trying to harness that talent of that mercurial forward?
It's one of those things, Tony. If you haven't got any socks, you can't pull them up. And I think Peter Knights would have been, we realise that, smart enough to know that. Knights, he played in some tremendous teams at Hawthorn, and the players that you've got around you can make you into a better player. And obviously, if the ball's not coming to Warwick, how's he going to kick the goals? So delivery is, to me, it's 9/10 of a full forward's makeup. If they get good delivery, well, if they've got a good set of hands and they're an accurate kick, well, that's the finishing touch. But the ball has actually got to get down to them.
Yeah, so that's a great point. And again, we're going to mention Jason Dunstall here, just harking back to last week's episode. Again, great delivery, lace out. He was great on the lead. He was really smart at reading the play, and he could outmuscle a backman. And there's a lot to be said for that.
Absolutely, Tone. Look, Dunstall's physical strength was amazing, but his body positioning was even better. But when you've got guys like Darren Jarman and Pritchard delivering the ball, makes life a lot easier.
Yeah, true. So, now let's move on, Troy, because we have a couple of birthdays today. You and you put your, well, it's not literally your statistician's cap on. You do have a cap. Do you want to tell us about that quickly before we move on to the birthdays?
The statistician's cap?
Yeah, what's the logo on your cap there, Troy?
Oh, it's a Zoo York cap.
Oh, yes, okay.
Yeah, it's a skateboarding brand. So I thought I'd try and look 10 years younger for today, because a couple of mates had a crack at me last week and said, that shirt you had on made you look 60 years of age. So I thought I'd go the Monaco lime green T-shirt and the Zoo York cap, Tone. So in tribute to Tony Hawk.
I tell you, if I was a copper, Troy, I'd bang you up for possible gang membership in that
yeah,
clobber.
I tell you what,
you got away with it.
I'm glad I've had that effect on you, Tone.
Oh.
And you talk about birthdays, and I know you love a birthday.
Yep.
So this week there's been some massive birthdays, and none bigger than our great mate from 1452, born in 1452. He had a bit of an interest in the conceptualisation of aircraft.
Oh, okay.
Of flying machines.
Would that be one? It's now, believe it or not, there's an airport named after this bloke.
Yes, there is. And I think you're going to give me the name of this fella.
It'll be one Leonardo da Vinci.
Oh, Tone. That's why they pay you the big bucks, mate.
Right.
Yeah, no, Leonardo, described as the greatest Italian polymath of all time.
Yeah, I think he's unchallenged in that particular standing. Anyway, all right. Well, happy birthday, Leonardo.
Yeah. Also, Nikita Khrushchev was born on April the 15th, and obviously famous as being Russia's main man during the 62 Cuban Missile Crisis.
He also, and I think he's possibly the only person who's ever done this, banged his shoe on the bench or the desk at the United Nations.
Yes, yeah. He went into shoe banging history at the United Nations.
He certainly did. I wonder what's happened to that shoe. I hope it's been immortalised in a museum somewhere. And he, like pretty much everybody else, waited till Stalin was dead before he criticised him. That said something about Joseph Stalin, I think.
A good move by Nikita, I must say.
Yes. We have two more birthdays, Troy. Who are they?
Well, two Samantha's, Tone, but one fictitious, one very real. Now, the fictitious Samantha was one of the greatest nose twitchers of all time. Oh. Do you know who she is?
It's from Bewitched, I know that.
Spot on. Samantha Stevens, played by Elizabeth Montgomery in Bewitched.
Bewitched, gorgeous, great actor, all the best of it. Yeah, great intro too. Oh yeah, all right. That was a formative show for me to watch as a young man. That's all
I'm
I'm
sure
saying.
it was. And Dick York and Dick Sargent played the roles of Darren Stevens.
That's right. They did the old switcheroony about halfway through the show.
Yes, Dick York had a chin like Mac the Knife, didn't he? It was an extraordinary jutting chin.
And what's the old term? Batting way above his league or something. I don't know how on earth he managed to land a babe like Samantha. But anyway,
she was an amazing woman, Elizabeth Montgomery, and the other Samantha, the very real Samantha. Now, if I know you're a musical aficionado, now if I'm coming up with the song "Touch Me," who springs to mind?
Well, the classically trained Samantha Fox,
Tony,
ex-partner of dodgy slimming tea seller Peter Foster.
Peter Foster, but don't confuse Peter Foster with the great centre halfback for the Bulldogs, a tremendous player, but the dodgy tea. I remember
That's
it. The
right.
Slimming tea.
Slimming tea.
Peter Foster. Now, talking about batting above your average, Samantha Fox, Peter Foster, do the math.
Yeah, well, he talked about that once, and he said he got her attention by ignoring her at a party. Everybody else was fawning over her. I imagine getting singing tips from her. But he overplayed. He displayed disinterest, and she couldn't tolerate that. And as the story goes, she came up to him. So there you go.
I've heard a rumour on the grapevine, Tone. That's how you landed the lovely Kate.
Well, speaking of batting above your league, so yes. Now that's all we have time for, Troy. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Tone. It's been an absolute pleasure once again. And to all the people that have tuned in and that have commented and liked the show, hats off to them. And to all the people out in the community, Tone, doing it tough, keep your chin up.
That's right. And join us again next week here on Isolation TV when Troy Zantuck and myself, Tony Moclair, present again More Than the Score. We'll catch you next week.